Issues and Answers is brought to you by Expert Hearing. Try the latest in hearing technology with a no deposit, no obligation 2-week free trial.
Hi, I'm Haley Perot.
And I'm Ryan Bonazzo. Welcome to Issues and Answers, our look at the federal election candidates in Thunder Bay Superior North, whose political parties held a seat in the House of Commons when Parliament was dissolved.
Our TBT reporters recently caught up with a number of the candidates on the campaign trail to ask them questions on a variety of important topics. Over the next half hour, you'll hear answers from Liberal incumbent Patty Hajdu, Conservative Party candidate Bob Herman, and Joy Wakefield of the NDP.
You won't hear from the Green Party's John Northey, who was invited to participate but chose not to, or from Amos Bradley of the People's Party of Canada, as that party didn't have a seat in Parliament at dissolution. But we encourage you to visit tbnewswatch.com to find out more about them.
The first question that we put to the candidates on the campaign trail relates to the continued annexation and economic threats coming from the White House. We asked, how should Canada respond to U.S. President Donald Trump? And why is your party leader the right person to execute that strategy on the world stage?
For the past 3.5 years, we've had a Conservative Party under a leader talking down Canada, in fact, using slogans like Canada is broken. In fact, we as the Liberals have always known that Canadians are incredibly strong individuals, and that even when we go through tough times, that we stand together, and that we're stronger when we stand together. And so the Liberal Party offers a sense of optimism, a sense of determination, and a sense of strength that we just don't see from the other parties, in particular the Conservative Party. We have a leader who has said that, and stuck to it, that the way that we work through the United States is through the lens of respect, and that we respect the United States' political decisions, but they also need to respect us as a sovereign nation. And that approach is already starting to pay off, with Mr. Carney having a successful meeting with the President of the United States, who has dropped language that has been extremely dismissive of Canada's sovereignty. We have the right to exist. We fought for that right. We have the right to exist economically, and we believe that we are the best party to be able to continue to stand up for a Canada that's strong and united. This is work that is critical. This is the work of our generation, to make sure that Canada has the ability to stand together, to diversify our trade partners, to be able to strengthen our own ability to trade with each other. Prime Minister Carney often says that we need a national economy. We are taking those steps together with provinces and territories as we speak.
Annexation is a joke. I mean, people are treating it like it's serious. Canada is never going to be annexed. That's just not going to happen. But I think our plan is 3 steps. The first step is to go tariff for tariff. So we have to have retaliatory tariffs if we're facing that threat. We also have to take the money gained from those tariffs and put it to good use, taking care of the workers that are impacted by the tariffs. Primarily, we need to get to the negotiating table after the election and negotiate a new Canada, U.S., Mexico free trade agreement. And finally, we have to diversify our economy so that we're not dependent on one nation like the United States. We have lots of resources, and the world wants our resources, and we need to get those out there and sell it, and to make our country so that we're not independent on the United States.
Jagmeet has spent his career as a lawyer and as a politician fighting for people. He's fought for people's constitutional rights in courts. He's fought against big insurance companies, and now he's standing up and fighting for Canadians. He's brought us, even though we weren't the government in power, he's brought us an expansion of health care. He fought for people's payments during COVID when people lost their jobs, and we're going to continue to do that.
There are fears that a global trade war could plunge Canada's economy into a recession. With that in mind, we asked the candidates, what will your party do to create and preserve jobs in northwestern Ontario and mitigate the economic impacts of U.S.-imposed tariffs?
The primary thing we should focus on is the development of our natural resources. Our party has a plan for the Ring of Fire and natural resources in general. If we get the economy booming in Northern Ontario, it's going to help everybody, every community and everybody that lives here with good paying jobs, a better tax base so that we can improve the quality of life for the people that live here.
When we look at the government contracts that exist right now, we pay other countries and other workers to do things that Canadians could be doing. So it's really important that New Democrats reinvest in Canadians so that we keep our jobs here. So that's what we're going to do.
Just before the election, Prime Minister Carney announced a package of supports for employees that are deeply impacted by tariffs, and including supports for workers. That's the responsiveness of a Liberal-led government. We can't sit on our hands and wait for things to happen to families. We have to have the supports in place so that if people are impacted by tariffs, that there is immediate action. We've also announced significant investments in trade corridor work. This is something that's really exciting for Thunder Bay Superior North, by the way. We are actually a port here in Thunder Bay, but there are also port plans throughout the region. We're on Lake Superior, a massive lake that could play an increasingly large role in interprovincial trade and international trade.
Sticking with the economy, the Ring of Fire offers major economic potential for our region moving forward. With that in mind, we asked what the party's plans are for the mining development. Specifically, how do you maximize economic opportunities associated with the Ring of Fire while advancing First Nations reconciliation and protecting the environment?
I actually was able to sit down with one of the chiefs from some of the communities there who are going to be dealing with the Ring of Fire, and what's most important is that anything that happens with the free, prior, and informed consent of all the communities involved. And so the NDP, that's a non-negotiable for our party. And with respect to industry development, we're obviously supportive of things that are going to create jobs in the region and support workers. And also when it comes to collaboration with industry and with other governments, we need to make sure that the processes are efficient and clear and don't duplicate things because we need to eliminate a lot of the red tape that happens when it comes to big processes. But another key thing is we need to balance that with environmental protection and make sure that we protect the Attawapiskat River and the waters around and the wildlife and the land.
The major loan guarantee that we announced last year in Budget 2024 is a huge piece in ensuring that First Nations people can prosper in the same way as non-Indigenous people from major infrastructure projects that take place in their territory. This is something that we can do together, but we can't railroad our way through. In fact, that's an old style of politics that hasn't had any success. How do you build major infrastructure like mines, like pipelines, like energy infrastructure, like electrification? You do that with people, and you ensure that people have the tools they need to fully participate. Canada will only thrive when every single person in this country feels like they have a place in this economy. And this federal government has understood that. I think Mr. Carney's announcements on things like trade routes, things like supports for workers are exactly the direction that we need to go in.
So Ring of Fire has been around for 20 years. Our party's plan is to fast track the approval permits at the federal level and work with the province, who's already indicated that they want to develop Ring of Fire. But I think an important part of our plan is committing $1 billion over 3 years to build an all-season road up to the communities that are around Ring of Fire. I've worked up there. People don't understand how an all-season road will change the lives of the people that live in those communities. So that's extremely important. And I think the third part that has to do with reconciliation is actually sharing in the tax revenue that will come from that development, primarily because it'll give those communities more autonomy to do what they need to do for their communities to improve their quality of life.
There are still a number of important issues to address, including about the carbon tax and the housing affordability crisis.
Those questions are up next when Issues and Answers returns after the break.
Issues and Answers is brought to you by Expert Hearing. Try the latest in hearing technology with a no deposit, no obligation 2-week free trial.
Welcome back to Issues and Answers, our look at the federal election candidates in Thunder Bay Superior North, whose political parties held a seat in the House of Commons when Parliament was dissolved.
The consumer carbon tax became an extremely unpopular policy for the Trudeau government, and new Liberal leader Mark Carney took steps to remove it when he took office. But the industrial carbon tax remains. We asked the candidates, what is your stance on a carbon tax, and how will you and your party address the climate crisis moving forward?
The carbon tax clearly had become a point of contention for Canadians, and whatever we do to address climate, to address emissions, to address climate readiness, we have to do together. That is not to say that we abandon the efforts to both reduce our emissions and prepare our communities for the kinds of climate impacts that we're seeing. Look, Northern Ontario is no stranger to the impacts of climate change, whether it's wildfires that burn out of control, whether it's the devastation of invasive species or the impacts on wildlife from a warming climate. These are all issues that constituents in Thunder Bay Superior North routinely bring up with me from all different walks of life. But we do have to do this in a way that keeps Canadians together. It is a challenging time with climate. We will not abandon the effort to be a global contributor to reduction in warming, but we also have to make sure that we're focused on taking care of each other when climate disasters occur, which they are even more frequently than we can remember in our recent past.
First of all, the Liberals have not removed the carbon tax. They've simply set the rate at zero, and that can be changed back at any time. But Mark Carney has been very clear about this, as he intends to move it to the industrial base. So one way or another, we are going to be paying for that carbon tax in the goods and services that we are getting. Our plan is to eliminate the carbon tax totally, both on the industrial base and the way that was done by reducing the rate. So we're going to do that. I think our party's plan to develop our resources to improve our economy while at the same time having some balance for environmental stewardship is the way that we have to approach this. Using sound scientific data and improved technology is the way that we have to move forward on these sorts of things.
The NDP does not support the current regime that the Liberals have come up with, and part of the reason for that is that it's still letting big polluters off the hook. And so the NDP's position is that polluters should pay to pollute and they should clean up their mess. So it's simple and straightforward. It shouldn't be the responsibility of people who are struggling to afford groceries to be paying for the pollution of big corporations.
The carbon tax became the flashpoint, but there are so many issues that affect the overall cost of living. Housing costs are a big reason why life has become unaffordable for so many people. To that end, we wanted to find out from the candidates, how will your party work with the province and municipalities to address the housing and homelessness crisis in northwestern Ontario?
Our party's plan is simple. It's to remove the GST, which is 5% on all new homes up to $1.3 million, and also to provide incentives for the provincial and municipal governments to basically make the process a lot smoother, to reduce fees and to free up land in order that houses can be built. Homelessness is an issue that we are committed to as well, but we need to work with the other levels of government, the provincial and municipal levels, to actually address it. It's not something that can be done by one level of government.
The federal government hasn't been involved in building houses over the last few decades. The NDP, on the other hand, has a plan to build, I think, close to 1 million units for housing, and people need housing. It's key to being able to do anything else. If you don't have somewhere to live, it changes your life dramatically. And so we need to get Canadians in homes, and we need to keep them there. And with respect to homelessness, there are obviously lots of factors that go into it, but job security is one that's important. And so reforming the EI system and making sure that we are creating jobs so that people can stay in their homes and afford them. And we also need to make sure that there are supportive healthcare programs and other things like that for people who need to access that so that they can stay in their homes as well.
We've taken huge strides to be a strong partner to both provinces and municipalities on the issue of homelessness. In fact, Thunder Bay and many outlying communities were recipients of the Housing Accelerator Fund, and Thunder Bay was recently recognized as being a leader amongst communities of its size for using that money to stimulate housing. These are the kinds of partnerships and relationships we need to continue. And in fact, today, Mr. Carney announced a number of investments and measures that will help accelerate the builds of affordable housing, stimulating builders that want to build deeply affordable housing, ensuring that new solutions that are rapid, like modular housing, can be well supported to be utilized in communities of all sizes, and ensuring that we continue to support communities that want to reduce red tape to get housing built so that we can ensure that no one goes without a house. This is something I've worked on for a very long time and will continue to be a strong ally with the party to ensure we stay focused on housing for everyone.
In an effort to address housing concerns, the Trudeau government recently moved to slow population growth by limiting immigration into Canada. But some would argue that Northwestern Ontario has also benefited by welcoming more immigrants in recent years. So we asked the candidates, what is your stance on an immigration cap to slow population growth and address the housing shortage?
The NDP doesn't support an immigration cap, but what we do support is working with different communities across provinces and across the country to ensure that the immigration policy that's in place meets the needs of those communities. You know, what's happening in Toronto is not the same as what's happening in Northwestern Ontario. And we also need to make sure that municipalities and different places have the capacity when it comes to different services to be able to support people who are settling. We support an immigration policy that's going to take the needs of real people into consideration, and that's going to take the needs and capacity of localities into consideration.
Ensuring that we have an immigration level that meets the capacity of communities to absorb newcomers. And that's exactly what we have been doing over the last number of years. Of course, some regions see a high density of newcomers. Other regions, like Thunder Bay, could even absorb more. We have the rural and northern immigration pilot here in Northern Ontario that allows for employers to look for highly specific kinds of newcomers that can help build our economy, that can help build businesses, that can help grow businesses. But we also have to make sure that when we have people choosing Canada, that there is a capacity of communities to absorb those newcomers. And that means making sure there's enough housing, making sure that the supports for adjustment are there, making sure that, in fact, there are jobs and good quality jobs for newcomers.
Immigration is important to our country. We don't replicate our own population, so we need to have immigration, but we need to control it. The immigration that was out of control for the last 4 years really put a strain on our resources, such as healthcare. We cannot afford to do that as a country because the rest of the people that are paying taxes for those services don't get the service levels that they were accustomed to. So we need to control it. I'm sure that our plan is to continue immigration, to look at ways of allowing people in that have skills that will contribute to this country, and to do it in a fashion that doesn't put a strain on all our resources.
There are other issues as well that affect Northwestern Ontario, namely healthcare access and the boil water advisories that are still in effect in many First Nation communities.
We'll have more on that when Issues and Answers returns.
Issues and Answers is brought to you by Expert Hearing. Try the latest in hearing technology with a no deposit, no obligation 2-week free trial.
Welcome back to Issues and Answers, our look at the federal election candidates in Thunder Bay Superior North, whose political parties held a seat in the House of Commons when Parliament was dissolved.
Healthcare is a provincial responsibility, but the federal government has a supporting role to play. Ottawa is projected to transfer more than $21 million in healthcare funding to Ontario in 2025-2026. We wanted to know, how will you work with the province to improve access to healthcare services, particularly in underserved rural areas?
significantly increase the federal transfers to provinces and territories so that they would have more fiscal capacity to reshape programs and reshape healthcare in a way that could meet the needs of citizens. We need to continue to push the provinces and territories to do that work, in particular around long-term care. And I will tell you that meeting constituents who have been deeply impacted by Ontario's decisions around placing seniors so far away from home has been some of the most heartbreaking stories I've heard. It's despite the fact that the federal government has transferred specific money for long-term care and aging at home to provinces like Ontario to improve those systems. So we'll continue to be strong partners to the provinces and territories.
Healthcare delivery is a provincial responsibility, but our party believes that we should add a sixth principle to the Canada Health Act, and that is transparent and stable funding. And it's through transparent and stable funding that we can assist the provinces in their delivery of healthcare services, including underserviced areas that we have in Northern Ontario.
Year over year, we've seen the erosion of federal funding when it comes to healthcare, and some provinces have had to step in and try to address that. And here, unfortunately, in Ontario, we've seen further erosion under the Ford government. And Northwestern Ontarians are sadly used to hallway medicine right now. And as someone who was involved in healthcare governance, it really frustrates me to see the state of our healthcare system right now. But nevertheless, the NDP has been fighting for the expansion of healthcare, for public healthcare, including dental care and pharmacare, and we've been fighting for that, and we've brought that to Canadians despite not being the government in power. And so I'm proud of that record as a New Democrat, and we'll continue to push the envelope when it comes to healthcare funding and healthcare services for Canadians.
According to the Government of Canada, there are still 35 First Nations boil water advisories across the country, including 24 in Ontario. Some of those advisories have been in place for decades. That's why we asked the candidates, what is your party's plan to secure clean drinking water for all First Nation communities, and what is the timeline to accomplish that?
Our party is committed to clean, potable water for all Canadians. We believe that we need to work with other levels of government in order to come up with a plan that has a timeline that we can all agree to and will provide adequate potable water. Unfortunately, we haven't even been able to debate this in Parliament. There was a Clean Water Act that was being put forward, but the Liberal government prorogued Parliament, so we never got a chance to debate this. But our government will commit to providing clean, potable water to all First Nations.
Neskantaga is a community that's been under the longest boil water advisory in Canada for 30 years. This community has not been able to drink the water. And that's just a reality that wouldn't be acceptable for any other Canadian. So, my response is, however long it would take to fix it if it was Thunder Bay, is how long it should take to fix it for Neskantaga. It's been 10 years of the Liberals promising that it will be fixed, it will be fixed, it will be fixed, and we're still here. Neskantaga had to evacuate its entire community over this issue. And the NDP has called for this numerous times and been leading the charge on this. So we absolutely support these First Nations communities in their fight to get water. And we think that's a fundamental right of every Canadian.
Since 2015, we've lifted 145 plus boil water advisories across the country and prevented hundreds of short-term advisories from becoming long-term advisories. And there are still a number of communities that that are in various stages of ensuring clean water for their citizens. Some of those communities have plants that are delivering clean water, but the Chief and Council has not yet felt the comfort level to lift that boil water advisory. It is a decision that Chief and Council must make. They are the ones that know their communities the best, and they have the authority to do that. We support those communities with materials they might need to help their residents feel that comfort. You can well imagine if people have grown up without ever trusting water from the tap, it's actually a process to get to that point where you can turn on a tap, see the water, and feel confident that that water is clean. There are a number of communities that are in the stages of construction, and those are on all different timelines in terms of when that construction might be complete, but usually within the next 6 months to a year. And then there are a few communities, very few, 2 or 3 communities that have very diverse geographic situations. For example, they might have a number of communities on well water and then a small area that could be serviced by a water treatment plant, and they're still doing an assessment for themselves about what system is best for their particular circumstances.
We hope the answers provided by the candidates give you some clarity as you head to the polls.
Remember, Election Day is Monday, April 28th. The polls close at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll have more election programming for you that night, starting at 9 o'clock on Global Thunder Bay. But for now, thank you for watching Issues and Answers.
Issues and Answers is brought to you by Expert Hearing. Try the latest in hearing technology with a no deposit, no obligation 2-week free trial.